Hello and welcome to the Bridge of Love. My name is Erin Cameron, and this podcast is where I share all the gifts, wisdom, and magic from my experience as a special needs mom. Things my daughter has taught me just by being in her presence, and things she has taught me through messages I've received from her higher self. If you've been listening or watching, you know, or you're starting to understand what the Bridge of Love is. Through love, we are bridging the seen and the unseen, the physical and the non-physical. And in doing so, we expand from what we've always thought to be true into a higher perspective on this experience we call life. And if you have a disabled or nonverbal child, you may relate directly with many of our stories. But even if you don't, you can replace that experience with any experience in your life that you'd like to understand more fully, to recognize its purpose in your journey. I do believe that the things I've learned and continue to learn from my daughter hold wisdom for all of us, and that is part of her purpose here. And that's why we created the Bridge of Love. So far, we've covered topics like creating your own reality, unconditional love, telepathic communication, and the higher purpose of kids like my daughter hadn't. And the magic keeps coming, simply because we choose to focus upon its existence in our reality. If you'd like more beyond this podcast, you can find it all on my website, erincameron.org. There you can sign up for a private session, sign up for the community, or read my blog where I post free channeled messages. You can also listen to recent episodes of the podcast without ads directly from the website. And there's a link on that page to make a donation to support the podcast, if you so desire. Today's topic is being in the moment. And I do have a channeled message that I recently received from Haddon on this topic, which I'll read at the end of the episode. Being in the moment isn't necessarily something I learned directly from Haddon, but it is a quality she embodies. So once I learned how to be more in the moment myself, I realized she is always in the moment, and she has waited patiently for me there. And in being there, she provides a sort of energetic guidepost for me, which allows me to practice being in the moment more often just by being in her presence. In looking back through my experience with her, I remember moments where I was fully present, moments where I felt joy, I felt love, or where I felt an appreciation for nature, for example, because I was in that moment with her experiencing those things. But I want to expand on this concept of being in the moment and her always being there. Just by being here, she creates this powerful reminder for me to be in the moment myself. And in this way, it's just another example of these amazing qualities that she's able to embody and that I'm able to see more clearly now by simply opening to them or opening to the magic, as I've said before. So what does it mean to embody something? To embody a quality is to become it. To live is an example of that quality. I think of people throughout my life who embody positivity or happiness, and just being around them makes you feel better about life and helps you to see life from their perspective. From that positive, uplifted vibration, because they're embodying it, they're living it, they are that quality. It is who they are, it's who they've become. And that belief is part of their everyday existence. Another example would, to me, be the Dalai Lama embodying peace. And I can imagine how peaceful I would feel if I were in his presence. So much of what I'm here to bring to light is these qualities that my daughter has by simply being here in the unique way that she is. And by embodying these qualities, she allows others to find their way to them, certainly starting with me. And in order to fully interact with her, you must be in the vibration of love and in the moment. And this is how she shows us what is possible for all of us, not just for her. So before we get to what it means to be in the moment, let's talk about how our thoughts are energy. Because I imagine the biggest thing that's in our way of being in the moment is all of our thoughts, our active minds. So let's say you think about something you want to do later in the day, like I'd like to ride my bike because the weather's so nice. And then you think about something you did yesterday, like, well, I ran yesterday, so maybe I should take today off. And that leads you to think, well, I wonder if I'm in good enough shape to work out 2 days in a row. And then you think about what good shape you were in last year and maybe even 5 years ago. And you compare it to the shape you're in now, and you start judging yourself for taking so many days off of working out earlier in the year in order to meditate and write and slow down with the season. And all of a sudden, now all of your energy is in all of these other times and places and not on the original thought that you feel like riding your bike today in the beautiful weather. Not only is this sequence straight out of my own brain, it's a perfect example of how our energy can get projected out. And in that, we lose the power to be and do things we prefer in the moment. And it also interrupts the flow of opportunities to you, like an hour opening up in your day, which is perfect for a bike ride. So for me, this little example illustrates how being in the moment is also a way to collect or bring all of your energy back to you, back into the present moment where it is most effective in creating your reality. And how I do this is just by observing my thoughts, allowing them, but also observing them and coming into a place where I can focus inside. Maybe closing my eyes, taking a few deep breaths, and even visualizing. I love just visualizing with my eyes closed, all of my energy coming back from all the stories and the thoughts that I've been creating with my mind, and bringing that energy back into my body and back into the moment. So I hope you find that little exercise helpful. So back to Haddon and how I imagine she experiences life. There's nowhere for her to go or to be, so literally her energy is always focused in the moment, not in thoughts of where else she could be. She's not worried about being late for practice or wondering if she'll be invited to a party with her friends or even worried about what's for dinner later. These things are not of concern for her. And all of them are actually taken care of by other people. All because of her condition. And in this way, she keeps all of her energy in the present moment and is pretty happy and content no matter what is going on around her. Although if there is something that she desires in the moment, she communicates it very clearly with powerfully focused intention. And so here's an example of my experience with Haddon, and that is when she gets a cold or a respiratory infection that sometimes has to be treated at the hospital. And when she's there for days or weeks at a time, we generally, as her parents, will rotate nights staying with her so that, we each stay one night and get one night off at home. And this whole process pauses all of our lives for those days or weeks. And once she gets better and comes home, and even on my nights off, I always have this deep appreciation for my house, my bed, the peaceful energy within my house, the quiet, how much it really is our sanctuary, and an appreciation for the simple things like being able to go for a walk in the sun, be outside in nature, and being healthy enough to do those things. When you're around and caring for someone that has to spend time not being able to do those things, it really highlights for you, and at least it has for me, what I am able to do, and it makes me appreciate it more deeply. It also reinforces all of the moments at home with her when she is healthy and things are easy and we're in our normal routine of life. That awareness in itself is a practice of being in the moment, which teaches you to appreciate the fun, light moments of life. But also, it's the practice of being in the moment with her when things are good. And that's what allows you to be in the moment with her in the other times when things get more difficult. And even there, in the difficulty, I can feel things like love, peace, connectedness if I'm in the moment with her. So I find it important to practice, at least for me, to be aware of being in the moment when it's easy, as opposed to being unconscious during the times when things are easy and then reacting when they're not. Easier said than done, of course. But you're not in the moment when you're in reaction, when you react. You're in worry, you're in fear of what might happen. So the moment is always the most powerful, peaceful place to be, no matter what. And it expands the fun, or the love, or the peace. It expands whatever is the highest vibration in that moment. And you can only get to those vibrations by being in the moment and not thinking about what could have, should have, would have been, or what might be in the weeks to come. I can literally feel the energy being sucked out of my body when I'm worried about what might happen days or weeks or even years down the road. These things are impossible to know. And specifically in our circumstances, there is a lot of unknown um, of what the future holds. And so I've found it to be really important to just enjoy the moment, because there are so many beautiful things that happen there, and things to experience. And it's just not worth worrying about the future. So, we can't know the future. It's or what might happen, and even more so, the future is highly affected by the vibration we hold within ourselves. What ends up happening in our reality is so much more related to you and how you're feeling than the effect of something outside of you. And that's a lot of what my messages that I've received from Haddon and from my higher self sort of direct me toward is kind of flipping around our idea of how reality works, and that it really is highly dependent on what's going on in here, inside, in your own feelings and your own vibration in the moment. So, on this thread of going to the hospital, a great example of not being in the moment is trying to track back where and when my daughter got sick. And I've done that even with myself. It's like, let's see who we can blame it on. And um, we all do a version of that, like tracking back, what might have happened and when, and who were we hanging out with. And um, it it doesn't feel good. None of that feels good, and I've noticed that within myself. As I've become more in tune with my own energy, I can feel the difference when I start going down that road of trying to figure it out. It brings you out of the moment and into the space where you're trying to figure it out, figure out who's at fault, and there's no way to actually answer those questions. Believe me, I've tried. I just have to trust that everything is going to be okay no matter what. And Haddon has told me that multiple times through messages when she's in the hospital. Um, and it's crazy because in that moment, I don't feel that necessarily that it's going to be okay or know that. But by listening to her in the higher perspective, she so often would say that. And I would just go with it. And those messages would get me through to the next day. So the more I can come back into the moment, even in those difficult times, and not think about why it happened and what went wrong and how I could have prevented it, and take the fault out of it and just allow things to be. It's such a more energetically healthy place to be. And it keeps me out of that feeling of being in pure survival mode, which I would say characterized a lot of the first years, the first 14 years of parenting her, where I was in fear of things happening to us. And in that place, I was powerless. You're truly more powerful in the moment. And that's a great example of how I found that power and that truth. And sometimes only when I was listening back to her channeled messages did I find it. They would remind me and guide me to just come into the moment. And everything is usually okay in that particular moment. Try it. um, so, the point here today is that my daughter exists in the moment as her default state. It's one of the gifts to her and to me that she exists there so effortlessly. And in this, she brings all of her energy with her everywhere she goes. I realized at some point that, most of us have to meditate for a while to get into that state of presence that she's already in all the time. And that she holds all of her power there. It's awesome because her brain, since her brain isn't creating distractions or stories or making stuff up, she isn't trying to blame anything or anyone for her situation. She just exists in that moment of love. And ultimately, I find that to be an invitation for all of us to join her. The following message that I'm going to share with you is one I received while Haddon was in the hospital a few months ago. It was just before I started the podcast. And I say that because in the second part of it, it's referring to my stress around when I'd be able to start the podcast, since so much of my energy was now going into being there for her. And of course, these types of things, like getting sick, are not things we plan for, right? So this was March 13th of this year, 2024. I was home on one of my nights off. She'd been in the hospital about a week at this point. So this is what she says. In every situation, look for the opportunity that is being presented to you and to me. In everything that happens, there is an opportunity. What have we brought to ourselves? What is flowing into our reality? One you have already connected to is the gratefulness for all that is being done for you as you rest in our home, our comfortable home. I know that I am not in the quiet, but don't worry, Mommy, for I am resilient. I exist in the moment. So as soon as it is quiet, and as soon as I do feel better, I don't hold on. I don't hold on to experiences in the past. If they are not based in love, coming from a higher vibration in which I exist, they no longer exist for me. And neither should your worry. So come into the fifth dimension with me and know that I am well, beyond well. I am thriving, I am perfect, I am happy, and I am free. I am much, much stronger than a virus, for example. Why? Because the pure love that I am holds a great power to which nothing of the sort can stand up. It will move through me as I am beyond it. Be there, beyond it, with me. The timing of your creations is dependent only on the flow of energy through you. Because the place where these creations are coming from, in that place, there is no time. When you remove time, you remove the stress around questioning the time or the timing. There is no time in the moment, no concern. So you needn't have concern in this moment about when your creations will be released to the world, shared with the world. You already know. The higher part of you knows what the divine right time is. And that will come in a moment as you are there in the moment. Remove all resistance and allow. We will be of great service. But this is for you. This entire experience is for you. Mine is for me. Yours is for you. I love you, Mommy. You are amazing, magnificent, beautiful. I see all of you now. I am with all of you. And we are together always. That was a really big message for me. I got two main things from it. First of all, it just sort of, it really illustrates how I was just sort of holding that question about when am I going to get to do my podcast? I can't do the podcast when we're in the hospital and I'm not sleeping. And, when you're holding those things, I was just holding that question. I didn't even directly ask it to her. It just came through in the message because I was holding that in my field. So I find that really a beautiful thing about channeling is it sort of answers your questions even if you don't directly ask them. They tend to come through. So, a couple of things from this message. It sort of blew my mind, but also made perfect sense how she described being in the moment herself and how it's what allows her to move on from difficult experiences. That alone was such a powerful lesson for me that allowed me to let go of so much with regard to how I perceive her experience. I was worried about the long-term effects of the being in the hospital on her energy and her spirit. Um, for because she spent so much time in the hospital for this particular. It was a cold, and also the effects of sleep deprivation while she was there. She gets around the clock respiratory treatments, so those are every few hours. And imagine you're just not able to sleep. And that's exactly what you need, and they know that, but they also are trying to help do the things they can do to help get her out as quickly as possible. Um, and just how overstimulating the energetic environment is in a hospital. Um, it's all going toward, all that energy is going toward amazing feats of saving these kids. And there's people running around outside your door and through your door and around your bed all day, all night. It's really a lot of stimulation, and I was truly worried about the effect that was having on her. Um, and in this message, I realized there's purpose in her being here the way that she is, being, quote, limited to the moment, uh, almost out of necessity. Like, how could she persevere through something like that otherwise? That made so much sense to me. Like, of course, it helped me really understand from a higher perspective how different her experience really is from what I imagined I would feel in the same situation. It felt unfair to go home, for me to go home to the quiet, get a break, when she wasn't able to do that herself. So this message was so helpful for me to overcome those feelings of worry and just focus on taking care of myself, which is really, you can't get through those weeks otherwise. You have to take your time off. And I've learned that. And this really helped me to do that for myself too. And the second thing I got was the difference between time and timing. This didn't actually click with me as deeply as, the first time I read it, as it did as I was preparing for this podcast. But it's a beautiful explanation of how we transcend time and its associated stresses simply by coming fully into the moment. So, what I've learned is that the moment is really all we have. It's all there is. And all there is to experience exists in the present moment. The past no longer exists, and the future is pure potential. What unfolds from the moment and how we perceive it depends only on our vibration in that moment. And how much energy we have is directly related to how focused we are in the moment. I see my time with my daughter as a beautiful practice of being in the moment. And from there, I'm able to more fully enjoy the unfolding. She really got to the point in that message that um, the past doesn't exist. It's no longer a thing unless we focus upon it and bring it into the moment, right? Or into the present, just by thinking about it. And, she's able to get through some pretty amazing feats herself, by just naturally being herself and being designed the way she is. So I find that to just be uh, quite the miracle in itself, and that she's really designed to go through this life exactly as she is. So thank you for joining me today. I hope you find all of yourself and your energy in the moment and appreciate all that unfolds as a reflection of all that you are. And until next time, I'm sending you so much love. Take care. Bye.